Hello, everyone. Happy October. We're getting closer to Halloween, which is one of my favorite holidays, especially growing up, running around getting candy and all that. Y'all might be too old for that, but it's still a fun holiday to observe and look at all the cool costume ideas. But anyway, we're going to go into Unit 5. You just completed your Unit 4 test, so we're heading into Unit 5, which is the Texas Revolution. And we're going to be looking at sort of how these Texans that were a part of Mexico, you know, went against the Mexican government, fought I guess, a war, a revolution. It wasn't very long, about 9 months, and then would win in their independence and become a country of its own, which will be Unit 6. We'll talk about Texas as its own country. But for Unit 5, it really just focuses on the Texas Revolution. So this is just a very short summary introduction video. Everything we talk about in here, we're going to go more into depth as this unit continues. But I really want to give you a very broad overview of what Unit 5 would look like. Okay, so the first thing is the settlement of Texas, and that's what we really talked about in Unit 4, right? We talked about the impresarios um, bringing Anglo-Americans into Texas. And then Texas, again, at that time was a part of Mexico. Okay, so a lot of these people are going to move in because it's really cheap land and there's a new government. So if they had debt, they don't have to worry about it. It's just a whole new life, a whole new start. So those are the Anglo Americans moving in. Some will bring slaves, which will be an issue when Mexico outlaws slavery. And so what we're going to see is these Anglo Americans, and that's what I put down here. Although they claim to be loyal to the Mexican government, they still deep down inside, they see themselves as American. Okay, and so we're going to see a lot of the thing the Mexican government does that kind of goes against the United States Constitution, including freedom of religion. Like these Anglo Americans were forced to be Catholic. They had to say they were Catholic. Most of them just said, yeah, I'm Catholic, but really weren't. Okay, so again, we're going to see a lot of things that this Mexican government does that is very anti-American Constitution. Um, and so that's going to upset these Americans that move to Mexican Texas. Okay, so unrest and discontent. So this is where we'll get to it. So Mexico passed a constitution in 1824, which gave power to all the Mexican states. And as you can see, we have the Mexican states right here. Here is the Mexican state of Texas, or Tejas, right? Nowadays, we're bigger than this, right? We have the Panhandle right here, and it goes all the way around, sort of in this area. But we don't. It wasn't like that then. Those were two different Mexican states. And so this was Tejas, right? And so eventually what they're going to do is they're going to rescind or get rid of the Constitution, which is going to make many Anglo Americans upset because now they're used to states having a lot of power, and now the national government of Mexico has a lot of power. So that's going to upset them a lot. Texas is also combined with the state of Coahuila, which is this little part right here. And Coahuila is actually going to get 12 representatives in government, and Tejas will only get one. Okay, so this is going to upset them a lot because they feel like they're not being heard in government. And also, tax breaks were offered to the Texans. So this is part of the unrest, right? They're getting tax breaks on all things coming in. And many of these guys, these Anglo Americans, were getting products from America still. And so when these tax breaks were coming, were taken away, now these Texans are having to pay taxes on these incoming goods from American stuff, and they're not too happy about it. Okay, so we're gonna see Texas break from Mexico. Um, so by 1835, tensions between Texans and Mexican government reach a boiling point. Okay. And so the big tip in this, especially when it goes from, okay, let's be loyal to Mexico, to, hey, it's time to fight. Some people are like, yes, we need to fight. Some people are like, no. Stephen F. Austin is one of those guys that says no. And a lot of these Anglo Americans in Texas look up to Stephen F. Austin. He is like their idol. He brought them there for the most part, and started this whole process. So he actually ends up getting arrested and we'll talk more in depth about why and all that. Um, for a year and a half. And then when he does get released, even Stephen F. Austin is like, yes, it's time we fight. This is ridiculous. The Mexican government doesn't care about us. They're a very corrupt and terrible government. So now it is time for us to fight. So they do that. And this is where we get to the Battle of Gonzales. It is the first, and I put quote unquote battle because it's not much of a battle. It's more of a skirmish. But it's the first battle of the Texas Revolution. And it takes place on October 2nd, 1835. The Mexicans wanted to take this cannon, which is where you get this come and take it flag. Many of us, especially in Texas, have seen this before. So this was a cannon used to defend the town of Gonzales from Native Americans. And Mexico knew these settlers were getting upset, so they're like, hey, let's go get that cannon so they can't use it against us. But the Texans actually did refuse to give it up. And they said, hey, you want this cannon, come and take it. So there'd be a very short battle. Only one Mexican soldier will be lost during this battle. All right, then we get to the famous Alamo and the lesser known Goliad, but still pretty big part of the Texas Revolution. So again, we'll get more in depth on these battles as we get to them, but 200 Texas defenders were at the Alamo and when Santa Anna's army arrived, and so they were told, hey, you have to hold off Santa Anna and the Mexican army as long as you can to give us time to train the troops. And I believe it was like 21 days. I'm not 100% certain on that, but they lasted that long. Eventually, they will be overrun and killed by the Mexican soldiers. There will be no Texas soldiers that survive. So we actually lost the Battle of Alamo. I know a lot of Texans are like, yeah, the Alamo, big important deal. And so maybe you think we won it, but in fact, the Texan soldiers did not win the Battle of the Alamo. And then Goliad, so less than a month later, 350 Texan soldiers were captured, and they were executed by the Mexican army. And so that became a big deal of, they're just going to execute our people like that. So it says these two battles became the battle cry for the Battle of San Jacinto. So we'll get to San Jacinto. And this is the last battle of the Texas Revolution. Sam Houston will catch Santa Anna and his army along the banks of the San Jacinto River. And then on April 21st, 1836, they attack. And it's a 17-minute battle that results in a Texas victory. The Texans also captured Santa Anna. And so then Santa Anna will go ahead and he'll sign this document, telling all the Mexican forces, we got to get out of Texas. Texas is now independent. So like it says, Texas is now independent. Time for us or it to be its own country. So we'll get into that next unit and a little bit later in this unit, but more on next unit. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it kind of is a good summary. I know I talked very fast and this was a lot of information in a very short time. But like I said, we're going to go more in depth uh, about all of these things I just discussed. Okay, so if you didn't get everything, that's completely okay. I just kind of wanted to give you a general broad overview of what we're going to talk about this next unit. So I hope you guys have a great evening, and don't forget to answer the questions over this video. If you want to go back and pause it and do all those things, you're more than welcome to. All right, thank you guys very much. Have a good one.